don't sleep on the Marvel licensing. I think as a public legacy, as a legacy that people can kind of attribute directly to him, that affects them. I think those Marvel rights, I think that's kind of where it's at. And it's interesting. I've had this conversation with a couple of people around these Marvel rights and what would it take and whatever. Think about if they did get those rights back and what kind of Marvel themed products and developments that we could get as part of that. What holds back Disneyland and some of these other parks from going big is because they can't invest the same level of investment in Walt Disney World and share those costs.
Right.
Man, if you get those rights, I mean that would be a huge game changer.
It would be. It absolutely would be. And you already see Chapek making moves. You already see him making moves kind of in it's related but not. And what I mean by that is, like, we've talked about how he's trying to bring, or he is bringing in the Netflix Marvel shows to, either Disney Plus or Hulu, right?
Right.
And that's kind of in the same vein as what you're talking about with the Marvel theme park rights, bringing all the Disney brands into the Mouse House.
Yes.
Basically creating this situation where the only place you can get this stuff is the Mouse House, whether it be on D Plus, Hulu, or Disney theme parks.
Right.
So getting the Marvel theme park rights, definitely it's in line with Chapek's kind of, approach so far.
I think it is. I think it is in line with his approach. And, we've seen some deals that we just never thought we would see, the like the Netflix shows coming on D Plus, the kind of the rights thing happening with Spider-Man and all that. I mean, we're seeing stuff, and I think Aaliyah even touched on it. Oh yeah, we got to give her a shout out with Hulk and stuff.
Right.
Because those are technically Universal or Comcast rights, and in order to get those for Disney Plus, I mean that's quite a big deal. I think going forward, especially in the theme park space, I mean, man, I think they might be working on getting those rights. I really do. It's the one thing that Bob Iger himself couldn't do. He couldn't get past it. He buys he acquires Marvel in 2009. And there were negotiations for years on the Marvel rights when it came to to Central Florida. And they were this close. They were this close to getting those rights from Universal, from Comcast. And it wasn't really, I mean, they had I think it was $1 billion in cash. It was going to be a lot, right? But the thing that held it up was actually the Oz Great and Powerful. That movie, wow. That 2013 movie that came out. And to explain that is Universal was developing some Wicked concepts. I think they were either a movie or a series or whatever, and they really wanted to go big with Wicked. And one of the things that kind of was impeding them was the fact that Disney was developing its own kind of Wizard of Oz type franchise with the Oz Great and Powerful, right? Always got to be a franchise. Yeah. But it was just if we develop these concepts, this is going to be in the way. This market's not going to, it might not hold these two concepts together. And they asked Iger, as part of these negotiations, to, one of the big sticking points was you have to kind of sideline this film completely. You have to put this in the can and never release it. and this was already in production. This was going out. It's Iger just he wouldn't budge. And that's what ended those negotiations right there. Movie comes out, doesn't do nearly as well as, as they imagined. And it was just dude, Marvel stuff, just the revenue alone from merchandise sold in Walt Disney World would have way trumped Oz Great and Powerful. Obviously, Marvel wasn't quite the juggernaut that it was. Avengers was just coming out, Yeah. But the potential was there. It's just this is, and now it's gone, Marvel stock has gone to the stratosphere, right? And so now that becomes a much different issue in 2022 than it was in 2013 or 2012 or whatever. But it's man, they were this close. And I think some of that has to do with ego, right? I don't think
Right.
Bob Iger could go to those creatives and say, "Hey, you know this movie that you're working on that's going to come out? It's never going to see the light of day." I don't think he could have done that.
Yeah.
I don't, because he's an entertainment guy, he's so part of that world. I don't think he could stomach canning something like that coming from that perspective. Whereas Chapek, you don't have no ego like that. He's very much a realist. Hey, you know what, ScarJo? I know some of your pay is predicated on a theatrical release. We're going to put it on Disney Plus anyway. And not work out that contract. That's Chapek.
Right.
He will do the things that are in the best interest of his company, no matter what anybody else thinks of him, and handle the fallout, on the back end. He'll not ask for permission. He'll ask for forgiveness. That's the difference between Iger and Chapek. And I think Chapek, any way to solidify his legacy would be do the things that the master couldn't do. And I think that might be one of them.
No, I think you're spot on with that. I think you're spot on. And really, it's kind of in, and I know a lot of people might disagree with this, but it's kind of in Universal's interest too, to sort of give those Marvel rights. Because from what I understand legally, Universal can really only work within the perimeters of what they got right now for the superhero island. So they can plus the current land, they can beautify and add to what they currently have, but it has to be within the confines of what they currently have. Like there's no way Disney's going to sign off on them building a new ride there. There's just no way. It's never going to happen. So that whole Marvel Island is a dead land. It's a dead end land. They can repaint it. They can make it look pretty. They can do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, nothing new will ever come to that land. So from Universal's perspective, hey, look, if I want to have something that we can constantly add to and plus and actually add new attractions, it might be best just to kind of forego the Marvel rights. And think about it. Even if you look into their, like, the most incredible attraction they have, which is a Spider-Man ride, which is like award-winning, like the most, this is the attraction that really put, Island Adventure on the map. But that same technology has been used already for other IP like Transformers.
Right.
So as long as Universal can find another IP that they can integrate that technology successfully, just as successfully as they did with Spider-Man, I think they're good. I think they're good.
I think they are. I mean,
it's
very interesting to tell you how bad those negotiations went. Like right after Universal announces, "Oh, we're gonna redo the footage. We're gonna redo the footage that's featured in Spider-Man to make it 3D and HD and all this kind of stuff." Just as a kind of fu to kind of, you could have had this, but now we're gonna double down kind of thing. You are exactly right about those rights, though. It's not an ideal situation, right? They are limited to how it's constructed right now. And like you said, they can paint. Actually, they have to paint. What's interesting is they have an annual review process where if Disney or Marvel, or I guess it would be Disney because of rights reverted. If Disney feels that those items that are featured in Superhero Island aren't up to show quality standards, legally they can revoke those rights. Yes. Wow. So every single year, Disney goes through with a fine-tooth comb and goes through every single part of that land. And, because if they find anything, that could be a potential legal battle. But Universal is very, very good about keeping that, spotless. But like you said, it is, and like we've said before on the show, it's Marvel of the 90s. It is becoming more stale and more stale and more stale. I was just having this discussion with one of our friends online, and he astutely pointed out, well, yes, you could have possibly made a deal, around this time had it not been for Epic Universe coming up, right? It's just less of a priority when you have a new park coming up. Right. But, and he was like, well, about 7 to 10 years is kind of where it buys them. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good assumption, but what is 7 to 10 years worth? Because when Epic Universe is done, you're going to have to come back to Islands of Adventure and take a look at that park, because some of that park is not as good as it can be, right? How much is 7 to 10 years worth? How much is a redo of some of those islands, or maybe Superhero Island alone? How much is it worth to keep this? How much is it worth to keep this kind of thing going? Can there be something that is mutually beneficial for the both of them? Like, look, hey, they wanted to go Wicked. How much of the theme park rights to Wizard of Oz stuff is it worth to them? Right?
Right.
You know, can we include that in the deal? I mean, Disney hasn't done anything with Wizard of Oz. I don't think they're ever going to, really.
Right.
They've owned those rights to everything outside of the MGM film for, I mean, since like the late 70s, 80s. They've owned those rights.
That Oz movie from like the 70s. I forgot the name of it.
Yes. Return to Oz, I think it was.
Yeah.
They just haven't done anything with them, and they've just held them. And it's like, well, if you're not going to do anything with them, and Oz, Great Powerful, didn't beat out box office expectations, then just, hey, can we give those to you? That way, you would be completely you would have no there'd be no hindrance to establishing the Wicked world and going that route. Universal has wanted to go that route for a long time. They've never really gotten it going in the way that they imagined. But hey, give you those theme park rights, give you those kind of film rights to those other stories and so forth. Hey, Disney, I'm sorry, Universal has a big problem with kind of cutesy characters and family fun entertainment. Right. Is there a franchise that Disney owns that you'd like the theme park rights for that we're never going to develop, right? I don't think they're ever going to develop an Ice Age attraction, for example. Like, I don't think that's happening. But hey, could that fit within one of your parks or Epic Universe itself? Like, I would have those kind of discussions and negotiations, because it's clear that as time goes on, the leverage of Superhero Island, it's not going to be good for both parties, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. You brought up a fascinating point about the Ice Age rights, selling that to Universal, because Universal does need that kind of cutesy IP.
Absolutely do.
Not just for the parks, but even just for like Peacock and their just overall library. That would have been such a power move. Like if Disney would have, because Disney just shut down Blue Sky Studios. If Disney would have said, "Hey, look, Comcast, Brian Roberts, we'll sell you Blue Sky. Give us the Marvel theme park rights. We'll give you the studio." And they can give you constant family friendly stuff. Right. Instead of buying the glass of milk, you're buying the cow. Yeah. That would have been a brilliant move. I
know. There are so many different ways this can go. There are so many different things that can be placed on the table. Even streaming rights. The streaming wars are big and heavy right now. Can we negotiate on that end? Can we have like a joint venture where we have, Marvel product or Star Wars product or whatever on two different platforms at the same time, Peacock and Disney Plus or something. And, kind of have an exclusivity, or not an exclusivity, but kind of a joint shared deal for a period amount of time, and they revert back to Disney Plus. Like, we can do stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, Blue Sky, given the whole studio, that would have been a good move. That would have been an awesome move. There are some ways to do that, and I think that kind of deal making, I think that really lights up Chapek's fire, and that right there, that's the legacy. That's where it's like, hey, I'm making moves in Hollywood kind of thing.